Jill Oviatt. And alongside the road here in Verdun, we've spotted another roadside attraction. And if you haven't heard, it's being built as the rock event of the summer, with 8 bands touring 8 Canadian cities in only 10 days. It almost makes us forget that Lollapalooza passed us by this year. The all-day festival kicked off at 1 today at Parc Terrien, just next to the Verdun Auditorium. And the festival goers, of all ages, were taking advantage of the warm rays and cooling themselves off while they waited for their favorite bands. The Tragically Hip is the favorite of the festival and will wrap up the day's musical extravaganza. But the list of bands beforehand promises to get the crowd rocking long before the hip enters the park grounds. Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers will surely heat things up with their reggae beat, and possibly a song or two from Ziggy's legendary dad, reggae king Bob Marley. And then there's Spirit of the West with some rootsy folk music. Eric's Trip was among the bands that opened the day, but many of the fans were having so much fun checking out the non-musical attractions on site, the band became more like background music.
How they look?
The hippie village has arts and crafts and all sorts of funky paraphernalia. There's an internet tent where you can go online and visit different musical websites and link up with the artists backstage. A food fair with more than hot dogs and hamburgers for the vegetarians in the crowd. And even a place to get a free massage if you start to get stressed out.
C'est bien, hein?
All this for $35, and the show goes on until 10:30 tonight. But if you're looking for some music with more classical overtones, the Festival de la Naudière continues this weekend in Joliette. The Orchestre Métropolitain performs the music of Mozart and Aaron Copland tonight at the Festival de la Naudière. Tomorrow, Montreal Symphony Orchestra takes over, and Sunday, in a slightly offbeat direction for this classical music fest, the music of A Fileta, Corsican musicians who have revived the traditional sounds of their native country. Now, you didn't think we forgot about the comedy festival, did you? Just for Laughs continues through the weekend, and we start our look at what you can do at the festival with the Montreal show. This is traditionally the first show of the festival to sell out. On at Club Soda, it's hosted by radio personalities Terry DeMonte and Ted Bird, and hands the stage over to local comics like Radio Free Vestibule, Barry Julian, and Scott Falconbridge.
I just always wanted to go to an AA meeting, walk right up to the front and say, I, Scott, have a drinking problem. If Jerry has 20 beers and Dave has 15 beers, and Jerry drinks 2 beers for every 1 beer that Dave drinks...
Former on-the-spot member, Scott Falconbridge is definitely one of the highlights of the show. He's one of Montreal's fastest rising comics. And the show's special guest, Jeff Rothpan, came in from Los Angeles especially for the occasion.
You people are nuts. Save your money. Go see us during the year when you pay $5 to see us instead of the Club Soda. What's the matter with you people?
But unless you already have tickets, you'll have to look for these guys during other parts of the festival.
Charlie, you're a moth. I'm not a moth. For the love of God, you're a moth! I'm not a moth. Come on! Oh, hey!
The Improv and Sketch Show, also on at Club Soda, continues until Saturday. Up-and-coming sketch groups like Joe's Convenience and Skippy's Rangers work the stage with improv troupes like Montreal's own On the Spot and Vancouver's Theatre Sports West.
You nearly drowned out there. Lucky we were there to save you. We're the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Tonight, you can catch the antics of Ennio Marchetto. He does paper cutout impersonations of, among other things, famous pop stars. And it made him a festival favorite in years past. His shows tonight and tomorrow are free, a kind of preview before his regular ticketed shows. Those start next week. Also Also at the Old Port, this is the last weekend to take in the annual book fair on the banks of the St. Lawrence. You can browse through first editions or search through boxes of second-hand books that are in both French and English. Les Bouquinistes is on until Sunday. The fireworks competition also wraps up this weekend with a grand finale presentation, and the Jupiter Prize for the best fireworks display will be awarded to the country with the best pyrotechnic panache. That's it for City Beat tonight. Have a great weekend. We'll be right back with more NewsWatch.
The Canadian Open Tennis Championship begins next Monday at Jarry Park. Caroline Corey joins us now. Caroline, talk about a star-studded lineup.
Yeah, at least 8 of the top 10 men's seeds, Lynn, will be at Jarry Tennis Stadium next week. And today, the opening draw to see who will play who. Well, it's the likes of Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras, and Michael Chang will all be at Jarry Tennis Stadium, along with 6 Canadians next week. And local stars like Greg Rusedski, who recently changed his tennis allegiances to Great Britain, and Boucherville's Sébastien Leroux will also be there. The top 8 seeds all received byes into the second round. They include the number 1 seed Andre Agassi, number 2 seed Pete Sampras, number 3 seed Michael Chang, and number 4 seed Yevgeny Kafelnikov. Some interesting first-round matches include an all-Canadian affair when Vancouver's Grant Connell takes on Sébastien Leroux, while Toronto's Daniel Nestor will be lucky to get out of the first round. His match is the number 10 seed Jim Courier. Well, the number 1 seed at the $50,000 U.S. Challenger de Granby, Sébastien Leroux of Boucherville, fell to Bahamian Mark Knowles in quarterfinal action today. On to Federation Cup action. Japan jumped out to a 2-0 match lead over Canada in Group 1 playoffs in Japan. Montreal's Patricia Hiboulet lost to Naoko Sawamatsu in singles matches, and Yana Niedli of Mississauga also lost to Kimiko Date. Barring a startling comeback, Canada is going to lose to Japan. The winner advances to the 8-country world group in next year's Fed Cup. The loser drops to the lower division of Group 1. Well, at the second round of the British Open today, John Daly maintained a share of the lead with 2 other players. The 29-year-old Daly recovered from a double bogey 7 at the 5th hole to shoot a 1-under par 71 in blustery wind on the old course at St. Andrews. And here is long John Daly on the par 311, looking to go to 5-under, and he does just that as he gets the bird to go. Now on to 12, and Daly looking to go to 6-under with another birdie, and he does just that. He shot a 71 today to grab a share of the lead. Brad Faxon on 16 in a position to tie Daly with this birdie putt, no problem. Faxon finishes at 6-under as well. He shot a 67 today, and a share of that lead is mentioned. Now, here is the Japanese golfer Tamori on 16, and he can go to 6-under with a successful bird, and he sinks it. He parred 17 and 18 and finished with a 68, and the 3-way tie is complete. Masters champion Ben Crenshaw, one of yesterday's leaders, finished up at even par today, falling into a group of 6 tied at 5-under. But they all had to surrender the limelight to American legend Arnold Palmer, who at the age of 65 would golf his last British Open, adding a 75 to his disastrous 83 yesterday, which put him well outside the halfway cut. And the golf shot of the day plays it off the wall. What is that? I think I can do that. Leaves about a 15, 20-foot putt after using the wall as leverage. Taking a look now at your leaderboard, you can see Faxon, Tamori, and John Daly all tied at 6-under for the lead. 6 others tied at 5 include Crenshaw, Ernie Els, and U.S. Open champion Corey Pavin. Well, the Expos hit the road for the next 6 days, embarking on a 5-game road trip, which begins tonight in Pittsburgh. All-star Carlos Perez gets the start with his glowing 8-2 record, and he's up against a guy who's had a tough go of it so far, Paul Wagner, with just 1 win in 11 decisions. Montreal is now just 2.5 back of the second-place Phils in the East and 10 back of the Braves. Philadelphia hosts St. Louis tonight, while the Braves begin a series with the Padres. Well, the Expos are now winners of their last 4, and they completed the sweep of the visiting Cubs last night at Olympic Stadium. Butch Henry pitched just his 2nd career shutout with a 7-hitter. The Expos now getting serious about that wild card spot. And here's a look at the battling Butch as he catches Mark Grace looking for his first strikeout of the night. Bottom of 1 now, and it's big Will Cordero, and he cracks out a double off the wall. That drives in Rondell White, 1-0 Expos early in the game. On to the third. Expos work the double play. Will Cordero flips up to Mike Lansing, and look at Lansing turn that thing over to David Segui. Butch Henry working the heat, puts Sammy Sosa to sleep. And now here's Darren Fletcher, and he hits the sweet spot. Fletcher banging out his 7th home run. The Expos up 2-zip. More homer action in the 5th. Rondell White, he takes Jamie Navarro's offering deep. That's White's 8th. Gives the Expos a 3-0 lead. Montreal up 4-zip into the top of 9, and Butch Henry goes the distance, getting Luis Gonzalez to pop up to Rondell White for the final out. No dipping into that nasty bullpen last night for Felipe Alou. Butch Henry picking up the win, and he goes to 5-7. On to Bonn, Germany. Canada's national synchronized swimming duet from Montreal finished 4th at the World Junior Championships today. For Chantal Sauvageau and Tina Agostinelli, both 16-year-olds, it was their first appearance on an international stage. The 29-country competition continues through the weekend. At the 18th stage of the Tour de France, American Lance Armstrong was the winner, just 3 days after his Motorola teammate Fabio Casartelli was killed in a high-speed crash during the 15th stage. Armstrong won the 162-kilometer stage with a surprise attack with 29 kilometers to go. He was a 33-second winner over Italy's Andrea Ferragato and was far ahead of the pack. Defending champion Miguel Indurain finished back in the pack but still maintains his overall lead. And that's it in sports, Lynn.
Thanks very much, Caroline.
Thank you.
Next on NewsWatch, part 5 of our series on keeping your kids safe. Tonight, how to keep protection from becoming paranoia.
Monday on NewsWatch, the BST debate. It means more milk, but doubles udder infections. That means more antibiotics for cows and consumers. It's legal in the U.S. Do we want it here? Monday.
There used to be an expression, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. But not anymore. All the news of child molesting and abductions has scared parents. Tonight we'll wrap up our series on child predators by looking at how parents can street-proof their children without robbing them of their innocence. Kelly McClugan of CBC Vancouver reports.
Turned around and she wasn't there, and I called for her and she wouldn't.
Absolute sheer panicked feeling. It's like the bottom just drops out of your heart and your stomach.
Panic. Your stomach goes to your throat and you just choke.
I didn't know if someone had walked off with her. That was my main.
Somebody must have kidnapped her.
Until you find them, your whole life stops.
Almost every parent can describe it, the feeling when a child disappears, even if it's just for a few seconds. Statistically, the chances of a stranger abducting a child are remote. But if the numbers don't support parents' fears, they don't erase them either.
If somebody's dead, you can't change it, you know, and I think that way all the time. My kids have to be protected because the worst possible scenario might happen.
Help! Police! Stranger, you're not my dad!
Though experts insist there is no hard evidence that street-proofing is effective, from time to time,
she kicked him 4 or 5 times, was able to get free.
There are stories that suggest it might be.
A man standing beside a rusted
We also hear stories of attempted abductions.
He asked me if I wanted to give him a hug.
That later turn out to be misunderstandings.
It's a tricky issue for any parent.
Psychologist John Yule has interviewed sex offenders and victims of abuse.
We don't want them to go off with one of these molesters, but we want children to be open. We want them to be able to talk to people and able to relate and not feel fear every time a stranger approaches them.
These are just young children. It really infuriates me that their innocence has to be taken away from them.
But it's that innocence that can make kids so vulnerable.
Kids are unbelievable.
Psychiatrist Roy O'Shaughnessy.
They have these extraordinary ideas about their own power and ability, and they think that all they have to do, even at the age of 5 or 6, would be to hit the man and run, and they could get away with it. And they have no conception of the limitations of their own abilities. And you've really got to talk to them about that.
But how?
Teaching kids, working through them, practicing it is critical. Just telling them about it is useless.
I get out a map. I can't find anything. I see this guy walking down the street. I say, hey, man.
This street-proofing program for kids delivers its message with extraordinary candor.
I can't even find the video station, and I can't find anything. I simply walked towards Darren, asking him some simple, direct, easy questions. He was concentrating on my map, and he was concentrating on the words that were coming out of my mouth. He forgot completely about his safety.
It's easy for kids to get caught off guard. In a series of tests organized with the help of parents and school officials, even kids who'd been warned by their parents about the tricks predators can use were deceived by this one.
Can I get you to hold this dog for a minute, please? I just have to get my car open there. Just, yeah, that's good. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, do you want to just put her in there?
It's impossible for parents to rehearse all the tricks a predator might use. It can be more effective to talk about general rules. Rules kids remember more easily.
My opinion, adults and teenagers should never ask you for help, directions, or questions. If they do, you don't have to be rude to them or mean, but we think you should just say, and this is a rule, no, go ask another adult.
The rules are helpful without being excessively alarming, and by the end of this demonstration, it's the rules that remain with the kids.
I realized a lot of things that could be dangerous that I've been doing, so.
Like what?
I normally talk to a lot of, like, strangers.
I usually sometimes I walk home alone, and I'll just ask my friends if, like, I can walk with them.
When should parents begin talking to their kids about these issues?
When you've got a kid under 5, you really can't leave those kids alone, unsupervised in the streets. I mean, I think that's just obvious. When you've got 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, they're in a much better age group where they can understand these things and can react.
Above all, parents should try to keep those talks about stranger danger in perspective. Fact is, children are at much greater risk for injury or death in the family car than at the hands of a child predator. Keeping that in mind won't eliminate the long, anxious seconds when a child suddenly slips from sight. But in the long run, it may help parents strike the balance between protecting children and preserving childhood. Kelly McClugan, CBC News.
Ontario's new government took the axe to spending today. The Conservatives chopped nearly $2 billion from the Ontario budget. Welfare has one of the hardest hit. Many recipients will see their checks slashed up to 21%, and a training program to get them back to work has also been cut. The Conservatives cut more than $100 million from hospitals, $50 million from schools and universities, and $44 million from social services. The government says after all those cuts, the Ontario deficit will still be $8.7 billion for 1995-96. The defense is about to wrap up its case in the Susan Smith murder trial after less than a week of testimony. Smith is the South Carolina woman who admitted to drowning her 2 young sons. The prosecution is seeking the death penalty. Wrapped up its case after just 2 days. We have this report.
Death penalty expert David Bruck must turn what had been the nearly violent anger of a small town into sympathy. Bruck is Susan Smith's attorney, and in powerful testimony from a psychiatrist showed jurors how Smith's childhood was marred first by the suicide of her father when she was 6, her own suicide attempt at 13, and her molesting by her stepfather at age 16. Psychiatrist Seymour Halleck said in the weeks before drowning her 2 little boys in a lake, Smith was thinking about suicide every day. She'd separated from her husband and, spurred by what the psychiatrist said was pervasive fear of being alone, started drinking more and having sexual relations with several men, including the stepfather who molested her, as well as a man she worked with, his father, and her estranged husband. The testimony supports the defense contention Smith went to the lake that night in a desperately suicidal mood. The psychiatrist testified that as the car rolled toward the water, self-preservation took over and Susan Smith jumped out. He said at that moment Smith may not have even realized that the children were still in the car. Whether the jury believes that will become apparent when they're asked to send Susan Smith to the electric chair. Dave Failing, CBS News, Union, South Carolina.
We'll be back after these commercials with the update and Jamie's weather recap.
Tomorrow on NewsWatch, seniors who suffer from malnutrition.
I felt so tired all the time. Of course, I didn't know what was better.
Tomorrow.
Now, as promised, here's the weather recap with Jamie Orchard, who is down at the Just for Laughs Festival. Jamie?
Yes, Lynn, and I'm not getting attacked by mascots tonight as I was last night, but they have these guys, if you're coming down here, they have these guys with these little dogs, and they look real, and they wander around. The guy scared the life out of me. I just about jumped out of my skin a minute ago. They also have a guy down here who he's called a butt artist, and he actually paints people's behinds with their clothes on, of course. It's very funny. Anyway, we're having a good time. Got some ice cream because it's pretty hot out right now, 27 degrees. A hotter day on the way tomorrow. Sunshine, hot and humid, though, up to 29 or 30. And then a few showers for Sunday. So the weekend right now is 50-50, but a good one tomorrow. Lynn?
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
Thanks.
Enjoy that. Our report for Friday, July the 21st. Our top story tonight, police are holding a Lachine man after his estranged wife was beaten to death last night. 48-year-old Maria Gallo had multiple sclerosis. She was found dead in her wheelchair in the kitchen of her home. I'll be back with more news, weather, and sports at 11 o'clock, and Carmel Kilkenny will be here for Saturday News Watch tomorrow. Have a good night.
This is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.